On June 16th, 2021, Governor Baker signed into law an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during a state of emergency. This act includes an extension until April 1, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This is entirely a remote meeting.
Thank you very much, Bill. So we'll start off with opening the meeting with a roll call. George?
Aye.
Jack?
Here.
Nate?
Aye.
I am here as well, and Brian is on extended leave. All right, so jumping in to our first presentation, that's going to be Paul, right?
Correct. Can everybody see the screen share? It looks okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Is it just me or does it look really compressed?
It's on another screen. Let me see if I can move it.
If it's, I mean, if it's just me.
It is on a horizontal vertical screen. So I'll move it to the horizontal one and try that again. How's that look?
Perfect. Thanks a bunch. Take it away, Paul.
Hey, good evening, and thank you for having me this evening. My name is Paul Chaffee, Director of Technology, and I've been with the town since June. When I first arrived here, didn't know what to expect. I was coming out of corporate world, and I have been pleasantly surprised on many levels to see what has been done within the technology field with using minimal resources, etc. And the first thing that we did was to do an assessment. And with that assessment, some of those things are going to come out tonight. So let me start with the mission statement. The mission of the Information Technology Division is to leverage technology and to deliver a more mobile and secure environment, empowering our team to accomplish their goals, providing collaboration tools to better communicate and share information and data. Through that statement, I think that really helps us understand really where we've come even through the pandemic, helping us to mobilize our team a little bit more. So once we've completed that assessment, you're going to see here the next slide is some of the objectives and key focus points that we began to focus on immediately. First, I wanted to check and through some of the discoveries, we found that we were missing a few key pieces like firewalls in certain departments, etc. So we really need to protect the town data and all of our assets. We started really quickly. One of the first things we picked up was putting firewalls and at the water department, as well as helping them set up some more newer servers to leverage the new version of SCADA coming down the pipe here. Another key concern was providing redundancy for high availability. In other words, we couldn't, with the importance of the town business, if we lost a device, we would be in a little bit of trouble. And what we found was that we had our core infrastructure had only one firewall and one switch. Best practice would dictate that we put in redundancy, and we were able to do that on a rather fast track pace, and that was accomplished. Increasing team collaboration by empowering our people to work anywhere on any device. With the events in the world that have taken place over the last few years with the pandemic, we were really in a hurry to get equipment into folks' hands on the first onset of the pandemic. And we had some difficulties with using older equipment, and it began to fail. So it really put some pressure on the tech team. So we had an answer for that, and we'll look at that in a few minutes, as well as ensuring that the most up-to-date software versions. In a climate where we have sometimes limited resources, every time a company would update their software, for example, Microsoft, we found that we had versions of Microsoft 2007 in the environment, really, which has gone end of life. And we began to address some of those issues. And the great thing was we were able to provide some secure cloud-based applications such as 365 and Teams, Azure, and we'll discuss some of those also. Biggest deal was to deliver a sound platform to ensure mission-critical capabilities across the board. one of the big things that came out of the assessment was, and kind of changed some of the priorities, was that there was CARES funds that were available to the town. And they had been, we really had a tight deadline to address those funds. And they really helped. As we go through, I'm going to point out where CARES funding actually saved the town quite a bit of money. And I think it was the tune of between $750,000 and $800,000, I think it was, that we were able to provide technical projects here and resolve some issues. One of the first things that I found in the network, it was a kind of a flat network. That meant if you were sitting in the library, you could possibly get onto some of the police information. That project had started maybe 4 years ago. And I think through, because of the turnover and some of the leadership issues with technology, we found that that had been just procrastinated. We picked that up right away, and we were able to complete 7 more sites out of the 16, which leaves us just 2, and they'll be completed within the next month as we progress through some of the projects. Through the CARES Act, I was really excited to find out that we could go ahead and use and install Microsoft 365 and other communication tools that's part of the package. Teams was a great example. One of the things that got me really excited over this past storm, I had one of the dispatchers call me and say, "Hey, Paul, why can't we take and leverage a spreadsheet across police, fire, and DPW?" And they figured out a way and delivered that. And it was a very valuable tool for the department. So this idea of putting our resources in the cloud with 365 and using Teams really benefited us even through the most recent storm we had. Because of insurance purposes, because of just good security, we needed to implement a 2-factor authentication. Again, this line item here was part of the package that was paid by CARES Act. We use Cisco Duo if anybody is interested in that. Another big purchase that we made, and as we begin to roll those out now, we purchased 250 laptops. This was able to standardize on equipment, first of all, across the board, as well as making our team as mobile as we possibly could. And with we added a docking station, which also allows them just to come in and plug one wire in and have their desktop as it sits now with 2 monitors, keyboards, mice, scanners, printers, etc. So that was another big win, and that was funded through CARES Act. Through our assessment, we discovered the water department needed some work, and we were able to get that done rather quickly. We have a new phone system. We're in the process of final design and implementation. Phones will be arriving by the end of this week. This was all through CARES Act funds. We will be taking our phone system, putting it into the cloud, which is giving us a ton of redundancy and fail safes that we'll be putting in to make sure that if we lose internet, we have failover also there. Redundant internet connections. Since we're moving a lot of our applications like 365, the phone system, Unis, and a few other applications to the cloud rather quickly, we need to upgrade our internet connections, and not only upgrade them, but make sure that if we lose one, it fails over immediately onto a second. For example, using Comcast and OpenCape and Verizon as failovers at different points in the thing. Also, that line item includes another grant that was given, I think, a year and a half ago, and that is connecting 4 of our sites with OpenCape. That started out about 4 years ago. There was a $100,000 grant. 50,000 went to actually putting in new fiber through the town, through those 4 buildings, and also putting in new firewalls for security in each of those 4 new sites. One of the biggest things too that we did was core infrastructure. We can go right quickly, but core infrastructure. That's when we came in and I looked and I saw we had 1 core switch. So all connections coming into the town going into that core switch and firewall. And if one failed, the equipment was rather old, so it was going to be very difficult to replace. So before we hit a problem, we replaced both of those devices with 2 each. So there's 2 firewalls and 2 core switches, and if one fails, they fail over to the next. All right, you can go to the next one. Kind of just to give you an idea from where we were to where we are today. We had an on-prem email server And that email server really was a 2013 server and would need to be replaced rather quickly. That means buying a new server. It would mean buying upgrade and then bringing in somebody to do the work to do that upgrade for us. What we did is we moved over to a Microsoft 365 and the services, which includes Teams. We had a flat network, the VLAN. Now we use Cisco Meraki, and each of our buildings, all 16 of them, will be isolated to, unless there are rights to be able to go from one place to the other, they will be segregated, giving us a higher level of security. We had an on-prem phone system that had many issues with it. It was configured rather quickly, and the sound was pretty poor, etc. But we were able to move. We're in the process of moving that right now to a new cloud-based telephony with Teams Voice for high availability across the board there. The internet, SPOF, single point of failure with the internet. We now have redundant at Town Hall. And we will be upgrading once Open Cape goes in. It'll be at the fire station, police station, natural resources, and the DPW. We're currently using our RDP to get into the town when we're looking for any type. I'm going rather quick. If there's any questions, just let me know. Unsecure RDP connections. It really isn't one of the best ways of getting in, but we leveraged what we could. Now we're going into a new level of security with two-factor authentication using Cisco Duo. Infrastructure, again, single point of failure. We have redundant firewalls and switches at our core. All right. Our budget. One of the key things or takeaways with the budget, we're going more from a CapEx structure of information to a OpEx. And I think it's going to, in the long run, save us money. And if I can use the example real quickly of just the Exchange server, that would need to be updated every 3 to 7 years. 7 years really bringing us into some difficulties of security. But we would have to pay for the equipment. We would have to pay for the software upgrades. We would have to pay for just the talent to come in and to implement that, and which could add up along the way. Here, what we would be doing, we have a license per individual, per person on Microsoft 365. And what that gives us is the most current, up-to-date, on an ongoing basis for Microsoft going forward. And we can go to the next slide because like you said, changes to the budget were basically because with the move from a CapEx model to an OpEx. Our salaries and staffing is beginning to be normalized. And I think with the hiring of Director of IT, Senior Support Specialists, and Tier 2 support, and better recognizing really some of the staff that we have on site. I was pleasantly surprised to find that some of the folks that we have were really willing to take up a little bit more and be part of the team and really contribute. And we've seen that on 2 or 3 times that really has given a strong boost to the team as a whole. And expenses, again, going from CapEx to OpEx.
Well, could I just raise a question here?
Surely.
I'm sure the jargon is useful, but what the hell is CapEx and OpEx? I'm assuming one is, capital expenditures. So we owned it, now we don't. We're renting it. We're renting the software, so it's in operations. Is that all that means?
That's all that means, exactly. We're going from having to own it. Well, it does a couple. You're exactly right. We don't have to buy the equipment any longer. We don't have to buy.
No, I understand. I understand. All right.
Yep.
I'm
And
just
the
saying,
benefits-
it's just way more confusing to the average town meeting member. If we
Okay.
could use simple English, it would help.
Awesome. We said, and that's simply it. We don't have to buy it any longer. We rent it, and we make sure that we have the most current at all times. And that benefits us in security. It benefits us in what it takes to really the cost of supporting that comes down also.
Paul, could I just ask you, going back to Open Cape, what's the timing on that? Where are we in that?
When I first came on, I looked at what the plan was, and they were gonna run 4 to 6 strands through the town. And it didn't make much sense because at that point, it made sense to really run a bunch of fiber links. So in other words, instead of just running 2 cables, they're gonna run up to 72. The cost was minor for that. And what that allows for the for the town is that it kind of future-proofs us. And I'll explain that once we talk about the current INET that we currently have. So
Sure.
right now, there was a change in the scope of work, which pushed it out a little bit. And now with a supply chain, we had a lot of issues of getting the fiber itself and delivered to the company making it. That is scheduled to start in next week. It'll take 3 weeks to complete, and then it'll probably take another 2 or 3 weeks for Open Cape to get in there and get their equipment in there. But it is now, we now got a buy-in from the company doing the work, Comtech, that they actually have the cable, and we've been on the schedule for 2 weeks, another week, and they'll start the work.
Terrific. I'll let you go to your next slide and you can kind of talk about that. I have a couple follow-up questions, but I'll let you
Surely.
get to it when it's time.
All right. Just some of the technology challenge that I'm seeing here. Hiring the appropriate staff has been a challenge due to limitations of resources, and that's both talent and budget. What do I mean by that? It's simply there are not a lot of qualified technical support folks on the Cape who want to come and work at some of the salaries that we currently have, and some of the cost of working in a municipality. So I mean, it's been very difficult. We've interviewed probably 8 or 10 people for one position. We were able to find one, and we elevated that immediately to a senior level technician because of their qualifications. But we're still trying to hire one additional resource, and that's a Tech 2 level. It's just very difficult to get them and lure them into the town right now. The next challenge that I see, and this is more of a little bit longer range, but not really, the need to replace the aging fiber backbone will become a challenge soon. That is the Comcast INET, which has been in service. I haven't been able to really nail down how long that is, but I'm getting between 15 and 25 years old at this point. We currently have a contract with Comcast to manage that for the next 10 years. But there's some clauses in there that gets me a little bit nervous where, if it is normal wear and tear of the cable and it goes down, they're not going to do anything about it. So we really need to stay up and manage them very closely with that. So that is something that I would like to get addressed sooner rather than later.
And Paul, is that something just for town departments, or are you talking about the more as it relates to replacing it with Open Cape?
No, this is connectivity to each of our buildings exclusively. Okay. This is internally. And currently there are two pair of fiber that have been run. And we were hoping to leverage the second pair, but we've already found out in Station 2, we lost a leg of that and had to jump over to the second leg. And with everything going on right now, we haven't been able to get Comcast to repair the initial one. But there are issues that I'm concerned about. It's only 2 pair. Running when and if that comes that we run a new INET, it will be much more robust to make sure that there are 612 paired, so that would help future-proof us for technology coming down the pipe.
Thank you.
So what can we do, and what are the recommendations? Once we complete all of the major projects that we currently have on our plate, I'm going to be doing a deep review of the job descriptions and try to get appropriate adjustments so that we can really try to get a team in there with a little bit of longevity. And as far as INET goes, really start looking at what it's going to cost us to replace that current INET environment. Now I have coming later in March, already have set up one meeting to talk with a company. They have done a lot of work with a lot of municipalities throughout Massachusetts, and sit down and see what their proposal might be, what it looks like, and then how we can fund it. Not only them, but there are two other that I'll be looking companies to look at and really sit down and say and look at it a little bit more strategically to make sure that it's put in properly and have the right terminations at each point.
So on that topic, when it comes to paying for it, what are your thoughts? And I apologize for the snoring puppy beside me every time I talk that you're going to hear. But what are your thoughts on municipal broadband as a means to pay, as in general, and as a means to pay for infrastructure like this?
Again, the municipality is new to me, and I'm beginning to learn more and more about what is available to us. And I think there are many ways that we'll be able to fund it and look at it. So yeah, that's part of, I need to do an in-depth look at what's going on and what's available to us. Just like when I first came in, I had no idea what COVID funds were. We found out very quickly, and we leveraged whatever we could as fast as we could. So that's the plan also with this. And that's why to get on it now, instead of waiting another 5 years, even though the contract may be 10 years long, I'd rather get in front of this, know what that's going to look like, and set it up for success, and be able to leverage anything that comes down the pipe now with whether it's whatever the funding comes from. Great.
Yeah, I know that there are different schools of thought when it comes to running any kind of municipal utility. But I do think, as we kind of, as a committee, look at long-term, what are some potential revenue generators for the town? My understanding is that after 7 years, it pays for itself, and then you're starting to actually make money. So I think that'd be something interesting to hear from you maybe next year on.
Yeah, something, and I kind of vacillate, and I'm trying to be as open-minded and learn really what it's going to take. But to have a product that we have to maintain, if we own cable, and that's a big difference, whether we own it or does somebody else own it. There's pros and cons. I've dug into that a little bit, and that's why one of the companies I'm looking at, he works very closely with both ends of it, owning and just have somebody else own it for us. There's pros and cons there, and I think as we get more and get deeper into the weeds, I think that'll help us really decide what's going to happen.
Yeah, that is the double-edged sword around it. But if you can get somebody else to manage it, maybe it ameliorates that concern.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, there is opportunity for both to have it, us own it and have somebody manage it for us, and at a cost. So then again, it's just looking at what those figures are and what makes sense.
Well, Paul, that's all the questions that I have. Other committee members?
Yeah, Paul, George here. I have a question on the difficulty of finding qualified individuals. And I wasn't quite clear. Is it because you can't find people with the appropriate skills that'll come to the Cape, or, it's a very tight market. So a function of salary and compensation?
I think I'm experiencing both. Most of the applicants that I've had an opportunity to sit with, we're really not qualified for what we were looking for. However, the handful that I was able to, I would say, let's get them back and let's get some questions going here and see what we can do. The salary just wasn't comparable to what the other options that they have. And we even lost one of our techs for that simple reason. He found a place someplace else and found it quickly for almost double what he was making here.
So it's compensation.
Is compensation. Yeah. And then when you throw in, I've heard people look and say, wow, that salary's close, but Now I'm paying 50% of my medical. And so, you know, it's a package
Right.
that I have to deliver. It's difficult. And I'm not saying it's impossible, because we just landed a great senior tech. But again, he's in his second career. Like myself, he's worked in corporate for many years, and now he's able to say, okay, I need to give back. Not only is it's just not the money anymore, it's what I can do and how I can, you know, help the town and what I can grow here to myself. So, I mean, you're not going to get the younger kids in here, I don't think, as easily. Not that we can't, but not as easily. And I think it is the compensation and package as a whole. But
And
we're
Paul-
doing our best to do that.
I would imagine that the people that you're hiring already have housing here. They already live here, or they're commuting from off Cape.
Exactly.
You're not getting anyone who's relocating here for what we're paying.
Exactly. Yeah, that I don't think that's an option for somebody to.
I think we face that.
Yeah, I think we face it
Apartments.
everywhere. Exactly.
Any other questions for Paul? Paul, congratulations on your appointment. Welcome to the town of Yarmouth. We look forward to working with you. And just a closing thought that I've been asking every department head, and obviously I asked you about municipal broadband, but you know, things that we're thinking about long-term as far as revenue generation is, you know, if there were a significant investment made in your department, that you could say, oh, you know, if I had X, then I could sort of build this out, and then we could start to bring in some revenue by doing something for other towns, or by, you know, creating a service that we don't currently offer that we could then make some money off of. Something to think about for when you come back next year.
Surely. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have Bob next, or do we have Bill? You're on mute.
Good evening, folks. How are you?
Hi, Bob. We're good. How are you?
Great. Hey, listen, before I jump in, I just have to say what a breath of fresh air Paul Chaffee's been for our organization. A tremendous find given this market for the technology positions that he's described. It's even worse on the director. And I don't know if you're completely familiar with the history. I mean, for several years now, the town has been unable to locate a replacement, you know, a high quality IT director, and had taken the work and distributed it among, you know, various consultants to provide assistance. And Paul has been a tremendous asset, and his work, you know, you see on all of our systems, is just put us on the best possible platform we can be. And you know, I myself was surprised by how many security problems and issues that we're going through. So we're so happy to have Paul here. It's been great, and his department is doing some great things as we continue to implement our new cable contract with the new fee structure that we have to try to beef up that service. Paul's going to also be a great asset there. So yeah, I guess we'll go off your screen, Bill, and welcome to our elected and general government town administration. Maybe just go to the next slide and we can get into briefly some of the mission type issues, which you know, are very general, obviously, for the town's administration, but you know, we stress high quality services that are provided efficiently, and we're very cost conscious. And as you can see, it appears twice right in a row in our mission statement. And you know, we're looking for quality of services in town, but within the revenues that we have available. And we got a little background on our Board of Selectmen and what their role is as the chief policymakers and how they support the whole operation here. And maybe Bill, jump into the next slide. It just gives you, you know, a little more detail on the mission of the town administrator's office. Obviously, we provide the day-to-day oversight for the entire general government operation in conjunction with all of the department heads that we work directly with. We're very fortunate here to have a great team of managers You've seen that as we go through the budgets one after another. So it's been a joy coming to Yarmouth and working with this team. Obviously, also, we have our projects and the policies and goals of the Board of Selectmen that we are charged with carrying out, and that's a big part of our operations. But I know you folks are probably as familiar with the operations of the general administration and selectmen as you are any department, so I won't linger too long on there. I know you want to get to some of the numbers. Maybe we can take a look at the next slide, Bill, and I think that'll give us a jumping off point for discussing some of the major factors of the administration budget here. The obviously with the salaries of the elected people, that stays the same, but the major increase really that we have here, one of the biggest ones is and you'll see a number of the increases in the administration budget do not reflect new services. We haven't added new services. One of the things that we've tried to do as we emerge from the pandemic and we see the revenues begin to get back to pre-pandemic levels, there were a number of items that when we were in the throes of it had to be removed from the budget commensurate with the reduced estimated revenues to support the budget. And one of the key items was the reserve fund. And all of the finance committee members should be aware that the town's reserve fund is a set aside funds that's under the administration of the finance committee for emergency and unforeseen expenditures that may come up during the fiscal year that no funds are appropriated for. And historically, it has been in the $100,000 range. And we got by, I think, for the last 2 years without a reserve fund, primarily relying on some leftover project funds that we were able to, you saw the larger number of transfers from older projects that have come by. Those were replacements for the reserve fund, but in a normally functioning, healthy operation for municipal government, we like to have it. And I would say that 100,000 is a target. It's kind of a minimum level that's available to the finance committee in the event that we do have an emergency or unforeseen expense, something that's a major thing. If there's funds not available for transfer out of different articles, it would come to the finance committee and you would conduct an analysis of the need and be able to use this fund to meet those needs. So what we're trying to do is just reinstitute the historic level of funding for the reserve fund. And I think overall moving forward, that's a positive step. And I think one that makes our overall general fund appropriations a little bit stronger. From
Could I
there,
pause and ask you a question?
oh, certainly.
So remembering now that we put this kind of on pause during the pandemic. So one, just like technical detail. I know that we had it in FY21. I know we spent a little bit, not a lot, but it's not showing up in the actual. And maybe that's because it just ends up showing up in the line item that got transferred to, but it's just hard from being able to, get a sense of what we actually spent out of the reserve fund. It's a little hard to kind of compare that if it's a zero. So the other question that I have though is, because we have this policy that Bob Lawton instituted of you can sort of transfer mid-year from one department to another, how does that work or augment the reserve fund?
It's in one sense a belt and suspenders. I mean, the first thing that you would try to do normally at the end of every year, it's normal to have inter-fund transfers or interdepartmental transfers. And generally speaking, the reserve fund is not adequate to cover all of the potential transfers that you may have. One problem when you take that route is that if it's, say, for instance, you're a quarter halfway through the fiscal year, you may not have a clarity that in one particular account, you're going to have enough money, at the end of the year to be able to transfer and to meet a particular expenditure. So generally speaking, the transfers among the different departments are kind of held off till later in the fiscal year when we're more certain that those funds are going to be excess. And budgets now, every year they get tighter and tighter. So you're less apt earlier in the fiscal year to find an account that, oh, look, that account, we're not going to spend those funds. I'm sure town council is not going to bill, obviously, he's gonna. So it makes it so that when you have the reserve fund, at least you have a small amount of set aside funds that is under the administration of a responsible, oversight committee that you can use to meet unmet needs. And generally speaking, it goes in conjunction with the transfers to make it through the entire fiscal year. But it is just an extra buffer.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So that's the reserve fund, and obviously we survived for a year without it. But that it's a good point, and I can double check with our finance team is here tonight, and I don't want to get into it tonight, but they can help me if there were 2021 reserve fund transfers that show up in the actual expenditure accounts. We can follow up and get that information from you. But I do know in the 22 budget, we don't have a reserve fund. So we took a pause on that, and we're hoping to get it back in there. Obviously, if we had a financial crisis, probably be one of the first things to go, because it is excess funds for unforeseen items. But ironically, the tougher the financial times, the more important it is to have something in your reserve fund, because more likely you are to have emergency or unforeseen expenditures that come up because you may not have fully funded the line items. And, and you've heard throughout the budget, just to kind of digress a tiny bit more, almost every department has come in, looking for, well, we'd like the tree maintenance budget restored to the historical levels, what it needs to be. And that followed through in public safety throughout police and fire. There's a number of line items that we're not funding up to 100% of the potential exposure for. But what we've tried to do this year is to take a step in the right direction and start funding these line items more fully, so that over the next couple of years, we can be in a better position to have them fully funded. So I do see some potential exposure for a reserve fund issues in some of the departments, and it could come with those loader tires that Jeff Colby was talking about, or even the police department bullets, which they have funds, but not as much as we could hope, because if everyone has the fully funded accounts, then you need a Prop 2.5 override.
I think George had a question.
Hi, George. Yes.
I don't want to ask the same question over again, but I think it's the same point. This reserve fund, I'm still, struggling understanding fund accounting here. But in any event, if we appropriate, I may have used the wrong verb even there, $100,000 for the reserve fund, and it's there, and we spend $50,000 of it, where does the other 50 go?
Oh, keep going. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
So my question is there an accumulation of this in the fund? So I'm asking a balance sheet question as opposed to an income statement.
Yes, and first let me answer the question quickly, and then make a stupid little joke. The balance left in the reserve fund closes out back into the general fund, because just to confuse people, they call it fund accounting, and then they name the reserve account the reserve fund. Well, it's not a fund, it's an account in the general fund, and it's reserved aside for the finance committee to use within the general fund. So it is not its own fund. It's just an account. And the only reason they name it that is in Massachusetts, they like to make it sound as complicated as they possibly can, but it is just an account in the general fund. So it doesn't maintain its own balance, and it won't show up as a separate fund
Okay.
on the balance sheet.
Okay, so it goes back to the general fund. Okay, good. Thank you.
That joke was worse than I had even imagined it would have been as well.
But it's true, having worked in state government, it's
But
absolutely true.
I will work on my reserve fund humor. Okay, well, moving into the wages, you see it going up the 58,000. The general wages in the department are only going up about 2%. And what the increase there primarily is replacing a couple of the items also that were moved off budget and funded from free cash last year that we definitely need in the town. We've made it a key point of funding some manpower to catch up on the minutes. We have a number of boards that have not had enough resources, members of their own team or other people have been assigned to take the minutes, and they've fallen behind. And
We're one of them.
yeah, and you know what? The Board of Selectmen is another one. And these are the leaders of our town. And listen, we've made a 100% commitment to bringing these completely up to date. And I'm working closely with the town clerk's office to make sure that happens. And moving forward, primarily, and I think it's only about $15,000 we're putting in to have part-time seasonal board secretaries available to assist in ensuring that these minutes are kept, approved, posted, and that's a critical thing. And additionally in there, what shows up too is we moved some part-time administrative support for the human resource function from a free cash funded situation into the town budget for transparency and stability. And so together, with the COLAs, with the part-time seasonal board secretaries, and that existing administrative support for HR, the total increase is the 58,000 for administrative wages. But there's no real new positions there. The expense account has been largely level funded. There are a couple of items that were, I think I had indicated in my bigger presentation, we're very concerned with, is that we do all of the advertising. And we have that big budget there, and our advertising costs are through the roof. And we needed to put in an additional funding for advertising. And there was also a small increase in our training and seminars budget that supports the administrative staff's professional development, that now that we've got the departments permanently staffed up, that we need to keep the training budget moving forward. So that's everything else is level funded under administrative expenses. We have also level funded the legal budget. And at the time of preparing the budget, I had a fairly high degree of confidence that we have an arrangement that is a flat fee arrangement with our town council that is fairly comprehensive. And it's not a very common arrangement. I've seen the flat fee or retainer arrangements with municipal council previously, but always with anything that was a contested item, or litigation and things of that nature, not included. And ours is fairly comprehensive. There's not a lot that's not included. And so our legal costs are stable. Now, I would just mention that the Board of Selectmen is undergoing an analysis of their legal services. And so one of the things they directed us to do is I developed an RFP, and we went out to the market and we sought proposals from town council firms. Among them, our current town council, the firm of Mead, Tallerman, and Costa. And from those submittals, the Board of Selectmen selected 3 firms that they conducted interviews with that I would consider probably the 3 top town council firms in the state. And they're KP Law, Murphy, Hesse, Toomey and Lehane, another high quality firm. We use them for our personnel, labor work, and also Mead Tallerman as well. And the Board of Selectmen next week is going to be discussing the town council services. Now, I only bring that out because if they do make a change, it does appear that the probably 2 of the 3 firms may not be able to hold this budget. The rates are a little higher. They go hourly. They propose potential retainer rates, but rates that have a large number of things accepted from them. So just for the sake of full disclosure, I sort of based our legal budget on our current council, which may very well be renewed through this process because they're one of 3 finalists. But if that doesn't happen, then we may need another look at the legal budget, or else need a big reserve fund transfer.
Bob, thank you for mentioning that to us. What's motivating this examination and getting RFPs?
Well, the way it was explained to me, and I can relay it, verbatim, is that members of the board felt that the Mead Tallerman, has been in place for about 5 or 6 years, and that every 5 years or so, they felt that it was very, very important to check the market, test the market, to ensure that they're confident that they have the highest quality legal counsel that's out there. So it wasn't, not 100% budget. Budget factors into it, and the fees that are charged. The Board of Selectmen is very cognizant of the flat fee arrangement, but they wanted to test the market. They wanted to bring in the best firms. They wanted to stack them up and make a decision. And so it wasn't a situation where they, had, unappointed or dismissed town council. It's just that they wanted to include them as well as everyone else in the market to take a fresh look. And so
Yeah,
that's
thank
what
you.
they've done.
Thank you for providing some clarity around that, because I was gonna say, if the same firm is in the top 3, it can't be necessarily about their work product. And it is like a general good practice, at least in nonprofits, that you should, change your auditor every few years as well. So I guess that makes sense, but please definitely keep us informed as to how that goes.
Yes, we'll keep you posted. And one thing I would add that is kind of an interesting point at the last, when you talk about the quality of the services. I'm not sure we've had a lot of cases in finance other than, they review all of the town meeting warrants and things of this nature. However, the Board of Selectmen asked me last week if I would contact the town departments and ask them what their feelings about, the quality of services and the promptness and responsiveness. And I see a lot of positive feedback coming back from departments. So I don't think that there's a significant quality issue with town council. And so I don't feel we're underrepresented, but I definitely support the selectmen's process, and we'll see how that works out. We'll keep you up to speed on that. And the next group of items I want to talk about, I spent a pretty considerable amount of time in the big budget process discussion talking about, and I think it's worth talking about again. Under the administration budget comes a lot of what we call the overhead types of items that apply across the board to support the municipal operations, things such as the retirement system, which is got a pretty steep increase. We're talking about 8.5% on the retirement system. And the good news is there that we have an actuarial program in place to retire the unfunded liability by, I think it's 2035 or so. And so we are on target to retire that unfunded liability, but it's a pretty unforgiving schedule. And the increases are quite large, and they certainly interfere with our ability to do things like fund other operating budgets. We need to take these items. It's an assessment for the system we belong to, and it's one of the big hidden costs of labor. And just like the health insurance, which we have a little bit better news on the health insurance, the costs have been very stable. And we belong to the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, and we've developed a fairly large fund balance in that organization, that they have a policy surrounding that. There's a target, for if costs, we've seen in just the past decade, year after year, of the type of inflation in medical costs that, is double digit. And we've sort of been through that. But since the pandemic, it's a very interesting phenomenon that's going on. Is I want to make sure that you understand our health insurance is not insurance at all, but we are members of a self-funded program, and these are working rates. So the way the health insurance works is that we pool all of our resources among all of the towns and districts. There must be 56, 58 individual members in the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group. And we pay for only administrative services from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and they provide the access to their provider contracts. So the providers with their administrative contract are required to accept the level of payments from us for those services that they would receive from any other, say, for instance, Blue Cross Blue Shield group. And we calculate what the utilization from each individual employee and their family members will be. And through that calculation, we develop an estimate which provides a working rate for if you join Blue Cross Blue Shield family plan. We estimate that each family is going to use a certain amount of benefits, $10,000, say, worth of benefits each year. And that is how we base the health insurance, so that in the event that people don't utilize medical services at a rate as high as we estimate, at the end of the year, those working rates, rather than going to a profit for an insurance company, like all other insurance benefits in the United States, these funds stay directly in our health insurance trust fund that stays with the group. And through that process, in recent years, and this is a pandemic phenomenon that is beyond just historical kind of comparison, what has happened is that the utilization of medical services has dropped fairly dramatically. And while it is picking up again now, it is nowhere near the levels that we saw previously before the pandemic, before March of 2020. Now, I'm not sitting here and telling you that the doctors have lowered their bills, but utilization is down, and what that's done is stabilized our rates. So you see very little growth in the health insurance budget for this year. And what it owes to is we've had some increase of rates, but we're also bleeding off the fund balance that we have in the trust and using those funds to a small degree to subsidize what the health insurance rates are. So I just, go into a little detail so you can understand how the group health insurance works and what factors impact that. The fact that we're, despite rampant inflation in many other sectors, it's really a little ironic that we see the most inflated sector of our portfolio here very stable because of those factors that I discussed and our ability to subsidize the rates. I tend to think looking forward that over time that utilization will return and we will see the rates go up. But I do want to say that we've been able to develop that fund balance to the point where there's a stabilization fund that is available over the next several years to ramp up to that. So I don't see any big spikes coming, although I do see the this pandemic fueled sort of detente for health services inflation. It won't be long lived, but let's enjoy it, for now. And when you look at the Medicare unemployment, I mean, it's going up, but it's a percentage of the overall, it's a tax on the percentage of the overall payroll that we have. And so, you know, the payroll's not going up dramatically. So that's not going up dramatically. And I ran out of room. I could have listed here, the town's insurances as well are going up roughly 10%. So when you put together all of your retirement, group health insurance, the Medicare, the town insurance, you know, that it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of increases that have to sort of come off the top of our budgets that support the operations. And so that's just a little on the overhead items. And I think based on that, I don't want to go too long. I want to answer any questions folks have. And I know the finance team has a great presentation and a great story to tell as well.
Robert, Bob,
Yes, sir.
question, this is Nate Ladley. The retirement funds, does that include Chief Frederickson and Chief Simonian?
No, sir. Now there's two. I mean, it does and it doesn't. There's two retirement issues that we're confronting as a municipality. The numbers that we just discussed are for the benefits that people receive once you retire. Those guys are retired at maximum, which means they'll receive 80% of their salary every single year moving forward. That's what that money covers. The money you may be referring to is an additional unfunded liability that comes in the town's budget to have, when you retire, there is a certain amount of your accrued leave that you get paid for, not all of it, but a certain amount. And when you have folks that have been here 20, 30 years, there's a retirement payout. And we've reserved funds in, for example, the fire department for Chief Simonian's payout, which, you know, won't be three figures, but it'll be probably over $50,000 from the accrued benefits that we pay them. So there's that lump sum that we have a problem with, of the stuff that's on the books. And then that retirement account goes to their income post-retirement.
Frederickson on the budget, he's going out in end of October. He announced. Is he in our budget for his buyout?
We're gonna have to provide for that.
Yeah,
And,
but is it in the budget right now?
you know, off the top of my head, I'm not sure,
I haven't seen it.
but it's that's a real item.
Yeah. I didn't see it.
Let's take a look. I put the.
Yeah,
budget.
I didn't see it either compared with Chief Simonian's. While Bob is looking, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that, you know, I think either in new business or maybe offline, I'm going to talk to Bill and Bob and just want to acknowledge, you know, that we have had folks occasionally attend the meeting from the public and put comments in the chat. Because of open meeting law, we can't respond to those. I can't be responding to those. And we don't have public comment on the agenda, which doesn't really leave a lot of opportunity for having some communication with the public. So I'm going to see if we can't put our heads together offline about having some kind of feedback mechanism to enable that. Any luck, Bob?
No, I don't see it. I don't know if Ed, off the top of his head, might know if that's parked anywhere, but
Yes, Bob, that's in the buyback line. in terms of the, both the police and fire. They have lump sums. You'll see in their wage budgets that relate to buybacks and retirements. And they lump in all the dollars for all of their anticipated retirement payouts. Not something any other department does, but for police and fire, they have that in the budget.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. And Simonian is scheduled to go out in 2022 and not in 2023. So his retirement would not be in the FY23 budget.
Thank you, Ed. That's helpful. So just, to that, building on that, and to the point that you alluded to, Bob, as we move forward with future negotiations, union contracts, et cetera, what, if anything, can we do to limit our liability in terms of sick time, other types of buybacks that we might have to, vacation, et cetera? I understand if there's kind of historical like grandfathering that might be the case right now.
Yes, no, there certainly is. And it's very difficult, especially when you're offering people 2% salary increases, to say that, well, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to take away your accrual of leave. And
Right.
potential buybacks. We can seek to limit those. But, when you talk about the labor, there's some problems. There's some problems with our labor issues and the labor costs. One of the things that I've noticed that, we're doing the collective bargaining. We did the probably the second contract, third contract now. I've been through with some of the units, and there's an increasing dissatisfaction with the benefits that the town offers, which are frankly quite lower than any of the other towns on Cape Cod, where like, for example, on that health insurance, which is, it's a major expense, the town offers a 50-50 split,
Yeah.
where most other towns are 75-25, and even the worst ones are 60-40. And so we've got to the point we're sort of standing alone on that 50-50. And, we've stood pat, but it is, fueling a lot of very tense moments as we discuss with labor what these costs are. And I will say that we've been very creative in how we've handled that, to look towards these, even in an environment where we're only granting, very modest cost of living increases. We've tried to work with labor to address some of these issues on the health insurance in a way that's a win-win for both sides, that will help in the future. I personally feel to keep those health insurance costs down, because both for employees and the town, I think what we're just talking about, in the future, we're going to see that rapid inflation increase. And one of the things that we've done at the health group is adopted some very innovative plan designs, such as the high deductible programs that municipal governments haven't seen in the past. And we're being very bullish here in Yarmouth on those high deductible programs that are maybe 20% less in premium than the traditional plans. But what they do is they shift more of the burden towards the enrollee to pay a much higher deductible. And so the way we make those so that they're economical for the employees is the town turns around and out of the high deductible, which is, for an example, you can relate it to your own budget on a traditional family plan. That high deductible would be $4,000 a year. So your family would have to pay out of pocket $4,000 before you're eligible to receive the benefits of the health insurance plan. And that's a steep amount for a family, especially a young family that's not particularly highly paid. So what we turn around and do is the town pays half of that high deductible, and the employee is only responsible for the other half. And even paying that half, the town's health insurance bill goes down a nice chunk as well as the employees. And what we've done, frankly, I've run numbers on it, that the savings is so great that we're offering, in addition to every single year, paying half of that high deductible for those families that are willing to take on that plan. For the first year, we're paying the full deductible. So, we have, and I think it's a very innovative cost-saving program that's going to have very big dividends in the future for the town if families sign up for this. But so what we're saying is that we'll give you, in the year one, if you sign up for this high deductible family plan, we'll give you a check to your health savings account for $4,000 cash, which is equivalent to all of your deductible. And the hope is they don't spend that entire $4,000, and with the health savings account, that can carry over and they can build a little nest egg moving forward, and that stays with them their entire careers, and then becomes their money. And even doing that, the town has a substantial savings, and that carries out every single year. So that is an example. I know you were asking about how we can limit the buybacks on the sick and vacation, and that's kind of more of a linear sort of a project to try to negotiate those items out of the contract. But I just wanted you to know, in addition to that, that we are trying, I think, some Cape Cod leading innovative strategies for addressing labor costs, in areas that look like our weakness. But we're trying to turn it around and make it a strength. And when people are concerned about the high cost of their health insurance, we're trying to develop some innovative solutions that can help save them money and save the town money without changing that basic percentage. And we're going to keep doing that as long as we can. But I just want you to know, generally speaking, there's a lot of pressure on the town, on the labor side, to loosen up and do things like grant larger COLAs, or increase the health insurance, or increase these little side things. And we've been very cost conscious, but trying to be fair to everyone as well. And so far we've been very lucky. But I just want to give you a feel on the labor side, because obviously that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, Bob, that's helpful. And I think that could be, we could have a whole meeting on this, maybe over the summer, just kind of talking generally about overall kind of management, labor costs like that, because, and I speak only for myself, but I am not one of those people who thinks you can keep getting blood from a stone. And I think it's actually better to invest and pay people quality wages, pay decent health insurance percentages, keep them happy with their jobs, as opposed to having attrition, having to keep, hiring, retraining, all that sort of stuff, and also having that up and down that comes with, retirement buybacks and that type of thing. It generally, again, it comes back to, for me, to the idea of if you want a town that is, full of folks who are, thinking innovatively and helping us come up with other ways that we can keep our costs down low, we have to make sure that they have the capacity to think about that and not be doing the jobs of 3 people for half the salary or something to that extent. So
Yeah,
and
and
it's-
then we wonder why we can't retain folks.
yeah, I don't wonder it, right? But I think others do. Ed, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, if the chair would like, I can respond to the payouts. What happened, it might have been 8 or 9 years ago in a collective bargaining agreement across the town. The vacation maximum was moved from 6 weeks to 5 weeks. But as the town administrator indicated, there were some people that were grandfathered in. That would be people like Frank Frederickson and also Phil Simonian. In addition, the sick leave amounts that were accrued per a month were also reduced at that time as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Ed.
And looking at the budget book, I see Frederickson's buyback is $9,081. Phil's buyback is $93,519.90 for 23.
This is Ed Centio. I just want to let you know that, again, Phil Simonian has put in his resignation, and we've updated those pages for him. And Frank Frederickson, in addition to a buyback for his retirement, also gets buyback during the year, or police do as it relates to their vacation as well. So that's his, not his retirement buyback, that's his normal yearly buyback.
Okay, thank you.
I think we're generally at the end of your presentation, right, Bob?
Yes.
Other questions for Bob from the committee? Okay, well, Bob, thank you. We appreciate, everything that you've done, drinking water from a fire hose to put together this budget. And, so far it's looking solid. So we appreciate you being with us every step of the way here. So, Bill, who do we have next? Is it Susan?
Madam Chair, it's Ed Santillo
Oh, hey, Ed.
who's going next. And in general for finance, we're not going to go through the detail of the mission statement. If you have any questions about any of our mission statements, we'll answer that during the question and answer session.
Yeah, we can read the
Just to speed
slides.
things along.
Thank you.
Bill, the next slide, please. What I want to do this time around, and I've kind of taken the nighttime meetings so that our team who works, significant numbers of hours to try to deliver services for the town haven't had to do that. But I wanted to take this occasion to introduce you to our finance managers, and I usually go in alphabetical order by last name. I want to introduce you to Andy Machado, who's our Director of Assessing, Mary Maslowski, who's our Town Clerk, Sue Ripley, who's our Collector Treasurer, and Maria Usava, who is our Town Accountant. And by way of introducing them, I want to kind of put their service to the town of Yarmouth in context with what the state, our auditors, and many other people think about the finance staff that you have. For example, the Department of Revenue asked the finance department to do a presentation to their all hands meeting for all of the Department of Revenue staff members. As it related to that meeting, they were asked to come back, and instead of doing it, well, in addition to doing it again for the Department of Revenue, they also did the same presentation to other municipalities throughout the state of Massachusetts. And recently, the state put out a city and town newsletter and cited the need for most municipalities to look at that recording again to try to understand some of, and it wasn't many of the best practices in Yarmouth, but some of those best practices. I also want to indicate that the state came in and did a financial management review. And again, they were glowing in their praise of the finance managers that you will discuss their budget with today. And the finance department, and one of the reasons why it gives its best practices is because it's tops in the state in the quality and timeliness of their providing a myriad of reports and analysis to the state in order to set tax rates, certified free cash, get state aid, and things along those lines. Bill, next. In addition, pre-pandemic, we were visited by a number of communities to look at how we do the operations in the different finance divisions. The finance department heads, and now we just do it via webinars, but in our finance department, staff leads are deans in terms of their profession and their go-to people for many in the state of Massachusetts, and in some cases outside of the state of Massachusetts. And I think there was a question about, how do we monetize these types of star individuals? We have been asked to, for example, look at regionalizing our assessing. that didn't pan out, but again, in Andy's case and many of our other folks, they want us on board, or many towns want us on board. And that gives us a lot of entrees to vendors that actually give us better rates, that will update their software and their products based on the town's input. And go next. Next slide, Bill. Thank you. And I think we talked about, and multiple people have talked about what's going to happen with our labor force going forward. There was a report that done 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago now, that looked at the wage gaps, or I'm sorry, the workforce skills gaps in the finance departments specifically. And if we go to the next slide, please. And I'm not sure if you can read the smaller type. This was an excerpt from the study, but it indicates 35% of our collector treasurer type staff members and 25% of our town accountant staff members will be leaving in 5 years. And again, remember, this report is 4 years old. We also have had 3 members of the finance staff in the last 3 years gone after and given over $30,000 in increases to go to other municipalities and or the private sector. Next slide, please. And the mention of the benefits is also an issue as well. And when we talk about other staff members, while the study was for accounting and collector treasurer staff members, just in the current recruiting cycle, there are 3 towns that are looking for directors of assessing. They're offering higher wages than our folks have, and obviously better benefits. And we've discussed the state mandated level of 50% for health insurance, and we're at that minimum level. We're not above that level. Excuse me. And in order to try to stay competitive with staff, we're looking to reclassify some of our finance staff members, and that's part of the overall budget. Next, please. Just to give you an idea of our staffing, prior to the Great Recession, the finance department had 24 staff members. Now, normally, town clerks isn't part of a finance department, but that relationship after one of the 8 different town administrators or acting town administrators, the appointment was going to be a temporary basis, was to have town clerks work in finance, but that relationship is working out great, particularly with our new member, Mary Maslowski. We, instead of trying to ask for more staff, most of the town departments have returned to their Great Recession numbers or exceeded those numbers. But understanding the budget, we tried to stay within the lower levels by streamlining our operation, automating, et cetera. We also, trying to think out of the box, have a relationship with the Elder Services to bring on mature workers. They like to assign people to us because of the advanced technology training we give our staff. In addition, we use tax work-off individuals and interns. One of the internship channels that was available to us was from Bridgewater State. They leased the Bridgewater State, and part of that lease arrangement was to provide interns, and we were able to take advantage of that as well. But a lot of that has gone away. We still do have 2 mature workers who work 20 hours a week, and they're paid by Elder Services, not the town of Yarmouth.
And Ed, has that gone away because of COVID, because of funding?
Which one? The interns or?
Well, you said,
Or the-
you kind of said broadly that a lot of these things have kind of gone away.
No, the mature workers provided through Elder Services, we still have 2 individuals that are mature workers.
Okay,
we
but the
also-
interns are no longer available because,
The Bridgewater State arrangement went away and the funding went away.
okay.
So what we've tried to do is instead of hiring or asking to hire new people, we've asked to go for many individuals from 240 hours from 37 and a half hours. That, except for a small amount for Medicare, that doesn't increase our benefit loading that would take place if we hired full-time staff. So we're trying to take that measure first. Next, please. And many other departments have actually increased their salary grades, and our assistant town accountant, who has to have superior ability, that salary grade hasn't been increased. We feel comfortable with the person that we have now and the people that we think we can attract in the future, that we're going to go after a grade increase for that particular position, because they are, in many cases, managing the financial aspects of many of the individuals, both in the finance department as well as the department staffs. In addition, we've pretty much set a grade 8 as our minimum for hiring people. And we have one individual that's a grade 6. We need people that are knowledge workers, not clerical people. And in the past, those were the type of people that were hired within the finance department. And we want to get this person, because she's proven that she's capable, up to a higher grade level. Next, please. And one of the major things you'll see in the budget, and other folks will talk about it, is that we shifted staff from the town clerks to the collector treasurers. We already shifted the beach stickers disposal and shellfish. And what we did was we charged some staff to the town clerks in prior years. Now we want to recognize that shifting has taken place. Next, please. And please let me know if you have any questions. I was going to answer some additional questions, but I think you talked about personnel. Hopefully we answered the issues with personnel, its benefits, its pay, it's not having enough staff hours. We're looking at succession planning for some of the baby boomers that we have on staff. And 5 years ago, or no, I'm sorry, 10 years ago, we went through a baby boomer retirement, and we have for multiple years to this point. And so we've been turning over staff based on retirements, but we need to do some things in terms of succession planning at the manager level, and that's a major focus of ours. So any questions, please?
Great, thank you. Questions for Ed?
And if there are no questions, I'd like to turn this over to our collector treasurer, Sue Ripley, to give her her perspective on the collector treasurer budget.
Great, thank you, Ed. Per usual, you have wowed us with so many details that we don't have questions. Sue, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening. This is Sue Ripley. Nice to be here with all of you. And I wanted to say, very much like Paul and Ed, this is my second career, and it really is giving back, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Enjoy very much working with Ed, and it's my second time around with Bob, which gets better every time, Bob, so we're in good hands. But really what I wanted to say is just highlight some of mine, again, not reading the mission statement, but I think all of you know, the whole purpose, of collector treasurer is really revenues. We collect them, we record them, we protect them, we invest them, we report them. It's really what we're all about. And customer service. Really, the best thing I can say about that is that we continually critique our situations that arise. We address improvements in our processes. And I think that's what's made us so successful here. We really do have a good team in the collector treasurer's area. And if I could go to the next slide, please. My second point to really point out to you is our convenient ways to make payments. We've tried every way to really work, whether it's been COVID time or any other time, to give individuals ways that they can make payments, how they can have access 24/7. That's made a big difference in how we operate. And my third one really here is really reviewing, reconciling bank accounts daily to prevent fraud. To me, that's so important. And what we've done, it used to be a treasurer collector's responsibility alone, and sometimes the assistant. But what we've done in our office is really break it out among now all 5.5 of us. And so we've cross-trained. We've gotten the concept of what this is about, how we protect the monies of the town. And that's been very beneficial. And if I could go the next slide, please. And the other thing we really look at, and we're trained as many of us are, have our certification, we are looking at the safety, the liquidity, and the yield. So in any of the investing we do, any of the monies that come in to our office, we're managing all three of those at all times. We're very cognizant of, we have a vault in our area, that it's locked, it's dual controlled. Everything's managed. We have Loomis that comes in and picks up our funds on a daily basis, and we're not paying for that directly. That's sort of now gone through a good portion of it through the bank that we deal with, but we don't have people, going out in their cars and taking deposits to the bank. So again, just more ways to look at safeguarding the funds of the town. And the fifth one I really wanted to mention on this slide is we've switched over to a biweekly payroll. It was probably a little bit difficult to get the concept down to the employee that was used to the weekly payroll, but I have to say overall, it's gone extremely well. I think people have adjusted, and it's just made it more cost effective for the town. And if I could go to the next slide, please. Here you're going to see a lot of numbers, what we actually collect. And if you look at those numbers and start to add them up, you'd probably say, well, how do 5.5 and at one time 6 people do this? And really what it's all about is just, we've automated our receipts of bills by doing a lot of scanning to our lockbox bank. And in doing that, we're not hand keying things in. We're basically batching things up, totaling things, and putting them through a scanner. So it saves us a lot of time. It also quickly deposits that money and shows that to a customer. So if they're using our City Hall system to make a payment, or they're wondering, did they get, my check that I sent in, they'll see that usually within a day or two. So that's a big advantage. And that's why we're able to process as much as we do, which also allows us to have a higher level things that we're doing. So we're not just having people sitting here keying in data entry. Very little of that is done anymore. And the other thing so important on here is our revenue batches. You can see we receive in over 4,000. On a daily basis, more or less, our departments are dropping off batches. They can have cash and checks, they can have credit cards. We're actually going through those, auditing them, processing them, and getting those deposited on a daily basis. And if I could skip over slide 15, but go to 16. What I really wanted to mention here for you too, when you see our expenses, those costs of $79,000 that we're anticipating for 23 really ties into our tax attorney who helps us with the takings that we do, the auctions, we have bankruptcy. It's also our City Hall systems, our bill processing, any fees there. Our with Eastern Bank, we have lockbox services, so it's processing fees there. And basically, it's just any of our costs for printing bills also who we use through Globe Direct. But just to give you an overview of the budget costs. And again, I think you heard a little bit earlier why our costs have gone up in the wages is that we have taken on the stickers. And it's been really good for us because when you look at a customer coming to pay the real estate, we can ask them now instead of waiting till March 31st. Would you like to get your disposal sticker? Many of them are coming in now and buying their beach sticker at the same time. We really like having our taxes semi-annual. It only allows or has the individuals coming in twice instead of 4 times. Some of our surrounding towns are doing quarterly billing, but that was something our townspeople weren't interested in a few years back when we addressed it. But I think it works really well, and they can make payments as often as they want. So many times we'll have some individuals that twice a year just it's too big of a bill. They'll come in every couple of weeks and give us $100 or $200. We accept that. Again, just more customer service to make it easier on our taxpayers. And then if you go to our slide 18, please. What I really wanted to stress here is that one of the questions you asked are lessons that we learned. And whether it was through COVID or just as many of us are looking at retirement at some point in time. Really how lessons we've learned is keep open communication. We've also said, address concerns and be flexible. And we do that every morning here in our office. As we're all in the office, we're here before our window opens to serve the customer. We're updating each other. We're making sure we know what the plan is for the day. Everyone, I believe, feels valued here because the absences I have are almost non-existent. So I know people enjoy coming into work. We just have that very open communication. We do continue at this point in time, and I know we're training to support human resources staff with some of the things that we used to do here in our office, but now that we have an HR department, many of those things will move over. We were able to meet the demands of COVID environment because of the automation and our online access. And because we have such a strong Munis system, that's really helped us to manage our core functions, the revenue, the collections, our financials, and our payroll. So that's helped a lot. One of the other things our department does, and we have some younger people here in our office that do a lot of the town training. In fact, we just went through that with cash receipts. We just switched over to a new recording of time cards called, it used to be Time Force, now it's ExecuTime. They trained on that. And we're looking at, as we start to convert over and upgrade to our new financial management system within Munis, we'll do additional training. And the training just isn't having a meeting like we are now. There's documentation that supports that too. And as Ed spoke a little bit earlier, we really do believe with our succession planning, just that extra 2.5 hours and the way we're managing individuals and managing our processes, we're not doing redundant things. We're really trying to do that knowledge base, and that seems to be helping us. And at that point, I really just wanted to turn it over to see if you had any specific questions that we could answer for the collector treasurer area.
Sue, that was a very concise presentation.
Thank you.
You could do trainings. Questions for Sue? Hearing none, I have one. You mentioned payroll and the conversion, and a few weeks ago we had in police and fire. We had just a discussion about, them being, I'm trying to remember if fire was as well. I think they were, but at least police being in a different payroll system. What are your general thoughts on kind of consolidating that all under one roof?
Personally, we would like to have that. I think we really have to look at the system they're using now versus our ExecuTime. I know in speaking with Ed, we believe anything's possible. We just have to look at the details. They are just sending in a different file for us to input into the Munis system. So we're processing everything through Munis, W-2s, everything goes through that way. So we do believe it's possible. In fact, while police had some staff out due to some medical reasons here recently, we were assisting them where we could in helping with bill payment, receipts of checks. So again, that's just one of the roles of finance overall, just reaching out to the departments and helping where there's a need, and it benefits all of us.
Thanks, Sue. Ed?
Yeah, I just want to say that they don't have a separate payroll system.
Right.
They have a separate time and attendance system.
Okay, but they do have staff working on it, was my understanding.
Well, every department uses a time and attendance system. They just have a different one.
Okay, there was a request for additional HR assistance when it came to payroll specifically, which kind of prompted the question.
Okay, yeah, I think they may have been talking about time and attendance, but that's okay. And we are trying to move them on. They have a really antiquated system for time and attendance, and we've been trying to move them off of that for years, but there might need to be a directive to do that.
Okay, well, it's definitely something for town administration to consider. All right, thank you, Sue. Any other questions for Sue before we move on to accounting?
Hello, my name is Maria Ruseva and I'm the town accountant. I've been working for the town for almost 9 years now, and I've been in this role for about a year and a half. It's nice to meet you all. And if you don't mind, we're just going to jump over the mission statement and go straight to the division key points. Thank you. So during the past almost 2 years now, due to the pandemic, we had to fit in our normal work schedule, the reporting, accounting, and communication for FEMA and CARES Act funds. And to be honest, managing these funds became a little accounting nightmare, mainly because of misdirection. In the beginning, while FEMA was working on their policy about what COVID-related expenses they were going to cover, we were told to split expenses between both funding sources in a certain way. And so we did. About 6 months later, and after crossing a fiscal year, when the FEMA policy was finalized, it provided a very different direction than what went out originally. So we had to deal with significant amounts of corrections and reporting reconciliations. Then when the new president took over, the policy changed once again. So at a certain point, we began contacting the town's FEMA reps and the CARES Act reps on a regular basis to ensure that we were going to be reimbursed for all our COVID-related expenses. There were also the issues where the CARES Act rep would tell us that certain item is eligible for reimbursement, and then during reporting period, they would tell us the opposite. So we have been back and forth dealing with them on multiple such items. Also, there were the items that were determined to be eligible for reimbursement to other towns, but then when we put in the request, we were denied. And so we had to push back and almost argue with the CARES Act team on those items. On some, we would win, and on others not. The whole process took a lot of our time, and still, the CARES Act spending is now over, but we still have to do reconciliation reporting for it. And we still have FEMA reporting to do. This funding doesn't have an end yet, and it's coming up. Okay, next. This is not new, but our department actually, this is not new, but our department has automated some comprehensive reports that we submit to the Department of Revenue at the end of each fiscal year. And this automation allowed us to certify the town's free cash and retained earnings third this year out of the 351 communities in the state. These numbers then helped us to start preparing for the fall town meeting. Thanks to the automated reports and the great finance team that we have here in Yarmouth, we ranked second in the state to complete the 3 big reports required by the Department of Revenue. They're the tax rates, which allow us to start the real estate and personal property tax billing that fuel the town's cash flow, the combined balance sheet, which results in the free cash and retained earnings certification we just talked about, and Schedule A. The Schedule A is a comprehensive report used by the Department of Revenue to compare communities in the state. And if this report is not completed timely, they can place a hold on the state aid for the town. Next slide, please. The next bullet is mentioning again the presentation of our best practices to the Department of Revenue Division of Local Services staff. We can't help it. It's a big recognition, and we are proud to be the recommended model for the other communities in the state. We are not expecting any negative financial findings from the independent audit for the past fiscal year, 2021. We are expecting to have the final draft in the next few days. I saw that somebody asked about it. On this slide, we have also listed some additional accomplishments and workload measurements. This year, again, we created payroll projection drafts and also expense and revenue projections in our financial management system, which were provided to the department for update. These projections are our budget development tools. And here we have some numbers just to give you a feel of the division's workload. During the last year, we have managed and audited 120 funds. We have audited over 16,000 invoices as required by the Massachusetts General Law, And we have processed 2,236 journals, in addition of reviewing and processing purchase orders and contracts, etc. Next slide, please, Bill. Here we have an overview of the accounting budget. The increase in the wage line for fiscal year 2023 represents the potential increase from 37.5 to 40 hours weekly schedules, as I mentioned earlier. And this is for 3 division staff members, 2 of which are what we call here roving staff. These are accounting members who can actually work in the different divisions of finance during the peak seasons for each division or whenever necessary. For example, during elections, they can help the clerk department. And when the OSA bills approach the due date, they can go to help our friends at the collector treasurer's office. To be honest, they have been working the additional hours anyway, because the need is there. They just don't get paid for it currently. In addition to the increase in hours, we have added a potential grade increase for the assistant town accountant position. What has happened during the past 2, maybe 3 years, is that there have been grade increases for positions in the town whose work the assistant town accountant oversees, often has to correct, and also trains. Now these positions are at higher grade than the assistant town accountant. And we have a great experienced and hardworking person currently in the role. And it will be a real loss for the department and the town if she leaves us. The increase in the expense budget line represents partial restoration of the accounting training budget. The current accounting training budget, which has not changed significantly for many years, doesn't cover the needs of the division. So when we need training, we have been able to do it by requesting funds from the town administrator's training budget. I think that there is no need to say that it's crucial to have knowledgeable, skilled, up-to-date professionals to oversee the town's financial transactions. Next slide, please. Actually, the next one. Thank you. So here we have listed some challenges we are facing in the present. We're currently working on switching our financial management system from desktop application to web-based application. The conversion process requires extra time to test and set up the new environment, and also to prepare training documents for the use of the department, as well as our own internal for our processes. We also need to comply with the new GASB statement starting this fiscal year, which requires reporting on all town leases, including capital, operating, and revenue types. This will require the building and maintaining of a database with payments and receipt schedules for the life of the leases. It's something we have not been required to do until now. And finally, there has been a good turnover of staff in town, mostly due to retirement. We have been doing initial training for new administrative staff to make sure that we demonstrate to them and provide them with the most current and detailed information on our processes and the different requirements associated with them. This is a very good and beneficial program for both us and them. And it also requires some time away from our regular duties. So the increase in hours we already talked about earlier will really help us to get done this project. Thank you for hearing me, and do you have any questions?
Maria, thank you. And we always appreciate getting your emails with updated revenue numbers. Questions for Maria?
And I still think that one person doesn't receive this report, and we don't, it bounces back. I'm not sure if this person is on the call.
Sorry, whose is it that bounces back? Is it
think
George Perkins? Because I know, George, you said that you weren't getting things for a while.
the
No, I'm
problem-
getting them now. I get it regularly now.
Okay.
Well, in any event, if somebody doesn't receive the report, please let us know so we can update our distribution list. If there are no other questions, I would like to introduce the town clerk, Mary Maslovsky.
Thank you so much. Mary, welcome.
Thank you. Mary? You're muted, Mary.
You had it for a second.
Oh,
Here we are.
good. Here you
Good
go.
evening. Thank you for inviting me this evening. Just for the record, my name is Mary Maslowski. I'm the town clerk. I was appointed back in September of 2020. So I had the pleasure of jumping in right before the presidential election. I too am happy to jump over the town clerk's mission statement. It really was an effort to give you folks an overview of the various and sundry items that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Bill, you can jump all the way to the town clerk budget. I just wanted to address one of the questions that had come through was, where have we sought other additional funds? So as Ed had mentioned, on the town clerk side, we do have one of the senior workers paid for by Elder Services. He provides a great amount of help to us 20 hours a week in the office. He assists with just about every task in the office. And he's a pleasure to have there every day. In addition to that, some things that haven't hit the town clerk budget, we use senior write-off, tax write-off seniors whenever possible and when available to do some of the ministerial tasks in the office, whether it's helping us update our voter record cards or dealing with some of the day-to-day filing and purging that we need to do. One of the things that has not hit the town clerk budget that could have under other circumstances is that back in 2021, we sought a CPA article to help with records preservation. So we do currently have a $150,000 article to help with records preservation and records management on a going forward basis. One of the things we did try and take advantage of this year also was the COVID CARES Act funding. We're successful in getting some of our vital records scanned using CARES Act funds towards the end of last year. So those are all items that haven't hit the town clerk budget, straight general fund budget that certainly could have under other circumstances. The real issue for us is the elections budget. So Bill, if you'd like to jump to the elections budget, the election budget should vary year to year. And this year with FY23 coming up, it is a election heavy year based on the number of events that we run during the course of a fiscal year. That budget would generally vary. This fiscal year coming up, we are faced with two state elections. Both of those state elections are anticipated to have in-person early voting, which is very labor intensive for our office. We also anticipate having, if not vote by mail, additional absentee ballot requests. That was a trend that started during COVID. We certainly don't anticipate that winding down in the near future. So for each of those ballots, it's labor intensive for our office. It requires staff, additional staff to be able to manage mailing out those ballots, to receive those ballots. And we have found during the presidential election season in 2020 that it really requires dedicated staff on election day at each precinct to process those ballots. That way it's not interfering with the in-person voters on election day additionally. So in addition to that, we have, we know that's one of the items that has been factored into this budget this year. Additionally, we went through the decennial federal census this past year, which requires each of the cities and towns to go through re-precincting. The good news is Yarmouth has grown. So because Yarmouth grew, we added an additional precinct. So that will certainly add to some of our additional election costs, needing to maintain an additional precinct going from 7 to 8. We certainly think we can handle it. And what we've tried to do to offset some of those costs is we looked to grant funds back in 2020 to purchase our original round of poll pads that we use for both early voting, town meeting, and now town election check-in. We also used CARES Act funds to purchase a second round of poll pads to deal with some of the additional processing that will be needed on election day. So we were fortunate that those were all items that we were able to fund through CARES Act funding, through the assistance of the rest of the finance staff in processing those invoices. So again, areas that we've tried to not hit the budget despite the fact that it is larger. The third and ultimate issue that we'll tackle this spring is because we've moved from a annual town meeting on a Saturday to a town meeting at night. We really, in the clerk's office, need to plan for 3 nights for a meeting. And many of those costs are per diem costs that we can't avoid. It's not just an even trade-off hour for hour. So for example, I would anticipate a typical night for us or a typical Saturday would cost us $3,300 to $3,500. We're expecting and planning for about $9,500 to anticipate for a 3-night town meeting if possible. And that really breaks down to individual numbers where we're looking at election workers going from, what would be an average of $500 for the election workers for maybe 6 for a Saturday to about $1,500, knowing that we have to plan for additional time for setup and breakdown, plus multiple nights. The same thing with employee overtime. We are having those employees there multiple nights after hours. That overtime adds up. So we would anticipate again going from an average of 500 to about 1,500.
Mary, may I just interrupt you? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I just noticed the time and I want to check with my fellow committee members to see if we can go a few minutes past 8.
I'm okay.
Jack and
Okay.
Nate. Jack, would you be able to do that?
Yes,
Okay, and hopefully George and Bob and Bill, that works for you. You're on mute.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Mary, please continue. And
That's all
hopefully
right.
we'll try to keep our questions pretty limited, but thank you. I know you're answering a question I sent.
The last item that really was is an additional expense is our stenographer. She gets paid on a per diem plus the hours. So we anticipate going from the average of a $1,200 to $1,500 bill to closer to $4,000 if she needs to come back for 3 nights. And unfortunately, we need to plan for 3. We hope we get to turn some of that money back, but we're trying to address some of those costs on a per election basis. And really, it's being driven because we have, again, those 2 state elections plus which carry with it in-person early voting and then the multi-night town meeting.
Terrific.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mary? I have one really short one.
Sure.
I happened to notice under the metrics of scope of deaths and births, our deaths outnumber our births, which isn't unusual on the Cape, but I'm just wondering statewide if that is unusual.
It's certainly not unusual in our demographic on Cape Cod. And I really don't think it's unusual statewide. Our federal census numbers were higher than people anticipated. We didn't lose a congressional seat like it was anticipated. So I think they're holding steady, but they're certainly not not favorable. I will say, we are, again, we were lucky. We went from what I had as a population of around 22,000 to over 25,000. So it certainly shows that there is growth in Yarmouth.
Yeah.
Certainly some of that growth may be retirees.
Yeah, I was going to say, the question is it people who are going to work here and sustain the economy? But
Well,
thank you, Mary.
I think it's both.
Appreciate that. All right. I think we can move on to assessors. Andy? Thank you, Mary.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Andy Machado. I'm the Director of Assessing, Town of Yarmouth. Again, I'm also going to pass over the mission statement, but I just want to point out just two specific things under the mission statement about that we strive to do, provide outstanding customer service, as well as inform and educate the general public on assessment issues and procedures. It was mentioned about, challenges. We have challenges every day, and I try to, hammer home to all the staff that with those two things, educating the public as well as good customer service, you can overcome most of those where it pertains to the taxpayers. And I just wanted to mention that there was one question that was posed about personal property assessed and billed fourth most in the state. What does that mean? That was on slide number 47. That means that basically we have the fourth highest number of personal property accounts in the state. Other than that, we'll go right to the budget overview. And that those modest increases are due to contractual wage increases and also succession planning and moving available hours from 37.5 to 40 for one staff member. I did just want to mention one thing that you mentioned about was regional opportunities. And Ed had mentioned that, we had some discussions about regional opportunities that really didn't pan out for the assessing office. The flip side of that is those communities that were in discussions with us about perhaps maybe doing some regionalization. Those are also the communities that are currently looking, and every one of the communities have contacted and tried to pilfer at least a member of my staff. So that's kind of the other side of the coin, because again, we talk about benefits and salaries and the insurance tends to be better. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. I wanted to keep it brief. If anybody has any questions, be happy to answer any.
So Andy, might that indicate that perhaps if we invested in, our workers in your department, making sure they had good salaries, good benefits, that it might be an appropriate time to reapproach those communities about a regionalization?
Yeah, I don't know the reasons that they did not pursue it, but at least two of the communities that are looking for assessors, they are the communities that had come forward to us and asked us about potentially providing them with some services. So I don't know what led to their decision to decide to continue the way business has always been done. But again, we're always open to that, and we'd be happy to do that.
Paradigms change, right?
Yes, exactly.
Maybe it's a good fresh time to look at it. Questions for Andy from the rest of the committee? All right, you're getting off easy tonight, Andy. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for your presentation. I think at this point, Bill, we can go on preliminary votes, right? For these departments.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll accept a motion to accept the preliminary budgets for these departments as presented this evening.
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second? Looks like George is seconding it. Okay, all those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. All right. I don't think we have any other old business, no transfers that we've received, right, Bill?
No, and just moving forward, the school department will be scheduled for the 16th, meeting on the 9th. I'll try to get as much done on the minutes and the report. So we might go over the draft report on the 9th. I should have that on Monday. Probably going to be a short meeting in that regard, but then the 16th will be the school department, and then we're wrapping up the report after that. Our due date
Bill-
is around the 22nd.
Last time we spoke, I recall that there were a couple of different dates because we've got not only DY, but the tech school. What,
Right, we have to schedule the tech school for you. If we can get them on the 9th, then we'll schedule them on the 9th, but on the 16th, we have invited the school department. And I believe they have the template. I'll check that again for the presentation.
okay. And then we have, do we have any other meetings that we can bring back, any department heads if people had any further questions, or is it just those 2 meetings?
If you want to, we can put them on the 9th, those questions. So if there's anybody that you're thinking of, then we can contact them. What I'm going to try to do, as I said, is try to get your report done by basically just going through the meetings and listing some information on each department, and then some of the discussion, and then you all recommended all the budgets so far. And then the idea is on the 16th, we would review the school project, and then we would have one more meeting before we submit the report.
Okay. Great. And usually there's a little bit of, tweaking as far as like language and stuff. So if I can take a look at that draft before, we send it out and are voting on it, that'd be appreciated.
Sure.
So I would just ask committee members if you have any departments that you have follow-up questions for now that we've gone through everything. And that, I guess that would include on capital as well, right, Bill?
Yeah, I have capital done. So we have submitted that, and we are wrapping up capital for the school department right now. So we just finished the voting, and I have to wrap up the capital plan for the school department. So, and I believe Bob has put the capital into the warrant articles. Bob, is that right, in terms of an assigned applicable funding?
We will have draft warrant articles to review by next week, including with what it looks like with the capital and everything in it.
Terrific. So folks, I'd just like to ask committee members that if you do have follow-up questions, you want to ask any other department heads to come back in on any of the items that we've reviewed, to let myself and Bill know, say by the end of the week, right, Bill?
Yes, so that I can schedule them. And it's doubtful that they would prepare anything in particular, but we can have them appear if there are any specific departments that you want to sort of call back.
Okay. And just so everyone knows, I've been communicating with Kevin Lennon and the police department just about getting that memo on the firearm shooting trailer and the overall project, the life of it. So once I get some of a couple more details, I'll send that along to everyone, so that may or may not inform whether or not there's further questions on that particular project. I think that's pretty much it, unless anyone has anything else. Okay, terrific. Thank you, everyone. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
I'm an I as well. Everyone, thank you very much for your time this evening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks very much, folks. Good night.
Excellent. Night.